Welcome to Austin Tech Connect, the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council. My name is Thom Singer, and I have been hosting this podcast now for 3 years. And the goal is to introduce you to people in Austin who are doing cool things so that you know what's going on in the world of tech, both with small companies, mid-sized growth companies, and the large companies that make up our tech ecosystem. And every now and then I run across somebody where I'm like, I got to have you on the show. So just a couple days ago, I was invited to a dinner. There was a lot of discussion at the table. And all of a sudden I was talking to this person. He's got a young guy. He's got a company. He's energetic. And I said, can you be on the podcast? How about tomorrow? To which he said, yes, because I always like people who don't overthink. They just jump in. So welcome to the show, Brandon Tigges.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Thom.
So for those of you who don't know Brandon, he is the co-founder and CEO of a company here in Austin called Job Machine. So he started off, he was a military kid. He moved around a lot, kind of did all the things that goes on with that. He was actually homeschooled, but he took his sort of little, military kid nerdiness and turned it into fitness and got a lot of self-confidence, got into sales, started a tech company. And the guy has a lot of energy, a lot of ideas. And one of the things he's really passionate about is being the best person he can be, but also helping others really find the best in themselves. And I got that from the conversation I had with him. I'm sure you're going to pick up on this from this interview. So Brandon, let's jump right in. So you grew up as a military kid. Did you know that technology was going to be sort of the path that you took? Or what were you thinking about when you were this homeschooled high school kid?
That's a good question, Thom. No, I mean, when I was a kid, I lived in 8 different states before I turned 18. And, when you move that much, I mean, you're always going to be making new friends either way. I was homeschooled though. So I had 5 younger brothers and sisters. Well, 4 most of the time we were growing up. The youngest one, he's our little accident, but
actually, I can speak to that because I'm 10 years younger than my next brother. We don't call it an accident, Brandon. We call it a surprise. Because a surprise is an accident that worked out really well because you like your brother. So it's just a surprise.
I do. He's awesome. We're super close friends. He actually moved down to Austin just 6 months ago, and he's working as an SDR now.
What's his name?
Johnny.
Shout out to Johnny because I'm sure he'll turn in to listen to his older brother on this podcast.
Yeah. He introduces himself as JT, but he's still John Jr. to me.
All right. So going on back to your story.
So all this to say, yeah, I mean, a lot of my time was spent, was focused on, man, I got to make new friends again. So, you focus on that. I've read a ton, when you're at home all the time, being homeschooled, I think now it's a little more in vogue. I got homeschooled in the 90s. It wasn't like a cool thing yet. It was kind of like, wait, what? You don't go to school? So, I was able to finish my school in like 2 hours and then just like read the rest of the day. Or go play around outside, and we didn't have cell phones or social media, so it was pretty interesting. I had a lot of control over like what I focused on and what I learned. And some years, my whole English course was just, here's a box of books that we ordered. You're gonna read all of them. So yeah, I wasn't thinking very much about how to make money. I kind of figured I'd take care of that eventually. I was just focused on like learning and meeting people. I didn't think much about tech ever, not really till my early to mid 20s.
All right. So you go to college, you get out of college, and then what?
Well, I went to college. I majored in entrepreneurship, which I think in theory is a great major. I did find it ironic that most of my entrepreneurship professors, particularly the head of the program, had never started companies. The one guy was like a middle manager at like a regional bank. By the way, like he had a lot of value in my life. I'm grateful for him. But I remember at the time thinking, well, how are you supposed to teach me something that you haven't ever done before? But anyways, like I was, and to be perfectly transparent, I wasn't very focused on school anyways. I was focused on having fun. I was very good at that. And I graduated, and I had decided late in college that I wanted to be a futures trader. I'd read some books about people that would go and, for all intents and purposes, gamble on like the soybeans markets or 10-year treasury bonds. And it sounded pretty cool and interesting. It sounded like a game where you made money for being good at it. So I decided I'm going to go off. I'm going to be a futures trader. And I ended up really struggling to get my first job out of college. What I didn't know at the time is that I was applying to jobs that I was underqualified for. Even if you were a double major in computer science and economics from MIT, getting a junior trader job at a proprietary trading company in Chicago at the time, that was really competitive, especially in 2011. I mean, the financial markets were still somewhat recovering from the '09 crash. So it was just an interesting time. And I thought that, I remember thinking to myself, man, there's something wrong with me. It's probably my GPA isn't good enough, or I didn't go to the right school. But in reality, if I would have just been applying to the right jobs, I would have got a job in no time. And thankfully, somebody took me under their wing and guided me down that path and walked me through how to get a job, helped me get my life a little focused. He got me to read a book by Napoleon Hill called The Law of Success in 16 Lessons, and helped me really come up with a sense of purpose. And Napoleon Hill calls it a definite chief aim. And I got focused on what that was. And I just started working backwards from what my ultimate goal was. And I started working towards that and ended up getting a job in finance.
Nice. And so let's talk about that job. So what were you doing there, and what did you learn in that first job?
Man, the very first job, I was taking 2 lists of financial transactions on paper and ticking and tying and making sure that they matched, and then putting them into a ledger. It was, I remember, being pretty bored, but I kind of looked at it as paying my dues, and I got really good at it. And you were supposed to have to be in that job for a year, any job at that company for a year before you got promoted into a different role. And I ended up doing it in 9 months. The main reason is that I figured out how to do my job using Excel macros and different tools. And 10% of the time it was supposed to. And I started doing the work of multiple people, and it kind of freaked out some of the people I was working with because, I don't know exactly why, but they didn't seem to like that very much. So my director was like, we need to move you someplace where we can take this energy and direct it. So I got moved on to the trading desk as an assistant. I was doing back office stuff on the desk. And I started working there and just kept working towards my goal at the time, which is to be a trader in Chicago.
So what pivoted you from that goal?
Well, I was very focused on becoming a junior trader in Chicago. At the time, I was working in Pittsburgh at a finance company, and I worked with so many great people there. I learned a ton. I also was very focused on, I'm going to go work in Chicago. So I bought a plane ticket 9 months in advance of actually going to Chicago. And I said, in 9 months, I'm going to go to Chicago and I'm going to get a job. I hardly had no money. I was making my first job out of college. I was making that wasn't waiting tables and living in my parents' basement, which is what I did for the first 10 months while I was looking for that finance job. My job at that company, I was making $33,000 a year. So I didn't have a lot of disposable income. So that flight was a lot of money at the time, but I was determined. So I booked the flight, and leading up to that trip, I started cold calling the companies that I wanted to work at because they wouldn't respond to my job applications, and none of them would respond. Or if I did get someone on the phone, they'd tell me to go kick rocks. And I was like, all right, fine. Well, I'm just going to go and I'm going to knock on their door. So this is back before the age of Google Maps. So before the trip, I printed out a map of downtown Chicago where all these companies were, and I wrote down where all of them were, and I went out there, wore a suit and tie, printed out my resume and cover letters for each company on nice paper, and I talked my way past security at all but 2 of those companies, and I walked in and introduced myself and asked to interview, and a couple of them gave me interviews. It was really, really cool. But what ended up happening I ended up interviewing, and I was really excited. And they unilaterally, they said, hey, this is really great. I was at the time scheduled to take this finance test called the level 1 chartered financial analyst or CFA examination, which is challenging. And most people study for it for 6 months. And, staying on brand with my, college study behaviors, I studied for it for 8 weeks. And I was, and if you pass that, it's a big deal in finance. And it basically shows, hey, you've got work ethic, you have X level of intelligence, you're probably worth our time. So they said, pass this test, we'll hire you when you come back. And it was fun, man. Going and working for a futures trading company, at least at the time. It's probably still like this today. They put you in a conference room, they crank the heat up, they give you this logic test, and they're asking all these abstract questions. They're asking you. Some of them will ask you to do 4-digit multiplication problems, which I've been practicing for years. I was very focused. And they'll ask you things like, what's 7 cubed? And see, you don't even know if you get it right, but how quickly, how quickly you can just think and make decisions. So it was cool. But one of the guys, one of the partners at one of those firms had a really big impact on me, because he told me, he's like, listen, man, I think what you're talking about, this is I think it's really exciting that you want to come work here. I love your energy. You remind me of myself 20, 30 years ago. The thing is, when I moved here 20, 30 years ago, if you think about an industry as like the life of a human, when I moved here, like finance but derivatives trading, we were like a teenager, young adult. The thing was booming. It's the early 90s. There were the trading pits. There was a lot of excitement, and you could come in here and make a fortune doing this, kind of like I did. And not to say that you can't make money now, but it's a much more mature industry now. It's kind of like, someone in their 40s, like, still healthy, but we're not getting any younger. And if you want a job, go pass the CFA. We'll hire you when you come back. But I want you to think here for a second and go and maybe ask yourself, what's an industry that's growing and booming like right now, like what finance, at least what derivatives trading was 30 years ago. And I remember looking at him and going, I really appreciate that. And also, I'm going to go pass the CFA. I'm going to go work for you. And he was like, okay, I know you will. But I ended up passing the level 1 CFA, got done. I remember it was like a polar vortex winter in Pittsburgh. It was like -5 degrees without wind chill every day for like 3 weeks in a row. And I remember getting done to like, man, I don't know if I really should be in finance, because here's the thing. Finance, being a futures trader, derivatives trader, there's clearly value in it. I heard, I want to cite him because he said this very articulately, and I'm going to butcher it, but I got to cite it. I saw a recording of Joe Lonsdale, and he talked about how like he was doing some really cool like derivatives trading, stuff that I'd never end up doing. And he was like, it's obviously valuable. There's value in reducing the bid-ask spread, between like soybeans contracts 6 months out into the future. But when you go do something, like when you go work in, let's say, technology, you get to see and feel and experience the impact you're having on people in a way that you don't necessarily with working in that type of finance role. So I remember sitting and watching a YouTube video and learning about like Mark Cuban and how he actually grew up like 5-10 minutes away from where I was living at the time. Went to school in Ohio and then moved to Dallas, Texas, with nothing more than his like 1970s Honda with a hole in the floorboard, and he did tech sales and made $1 billion. I was like, Texas tech. I could get behind that, and I could do that. I could sell. So I ended up like learning a little bit more about it. Learned that Austin was this budding, this budding tech community. I had a lot of fond memories of living in San Antonio when I was a kid, and I on a whim, I opened up 50 tabs in Google Chrome. I searched Austin tech sales startup, found a bunch of jobs. At this point, I was a job machine. So I had a process, applied to all the jobs, went and followed up, was persistent, got interviews, and I moved to Austin 3 months later.
So it's interesting as you tell the whole arc of that story of what led you to tech and what led you to Austin. The fascinating part about it to me is a couple times you said, I met this mentor who had a really big impact on me, or I read this book that really changed my life, or this partner at the firm I wanted to work for said, hey, I see myself in you. You should be doing that. And you listen. I think so often mentors show up and people, or books show up, or a video shows up, and people go, huh, and they don't actually let it soak in. What is it about you that made you listen to these mentors? And what is it about you that said, I'm just going to roll up my sleeves and go?
I think it has a lot to do with my parents. I was, they chose to homeschool me, and in our school system in the United States, I believe it was modeled after the Prussian school system, which is it's former northeastern Germany. It actually got moved into Poland. It's kind of like a whole post World War II thing about that, but it used to be northeastern Germany, and it was designed to create industrial revolution era factory workers. They're kind of supposed to be an automaton. Don't get me wrong, there's obviously super brilliant people that go to U.S. public school. And also, one of the things that I found is that it used to confuse me a lot, because I just questioned everything. I always asked, well, is that true? And the way that people call say that I think outside the box sometimes. I don't really believe that there is a box. I question everything. I want to be able to understand, is this true or not? Like, if I don't necessarily care if someone says, well, this is the path that you're supposed to do, or if everyone believes, like the consensus belief is that you should go do it this way. In my mind, I go, okay, well, is that true? And if it is, great, I'll do it the way that everyone says they should. But then also I look at the results and I see, well, most people do this. Are they getting the result that they want? And then I'll go, okay, well, if they're not, well, then maybe there's a better way. Who is somebody who has already gotten the results that I'm looking for? Because success leaves clues. So if I can, find that person and, through some humility and persistence, get 5 minutes of their time to ask them a question, ask good questions, get good answers. Ask bad questions, get bad answers. So yeah, I think it's, and the way that I was raised, the other thing is that, work ethic is everything. I was raised to, and I think part of this is just the way that I'm wired, but all my brothers and sisters tend to be pretty hard workers. I'm a little extreme in most of the things that I do, but whenever I have a problem that I'm working towards, failure is just feedback. I don't stop until I achieve what I'm working towards, assuming I have a good compelling reason for it. And I don't like doing things unless I have a good compelling reason for it. So it's not like things not working out doesn't mean that it's a bad goal. It means that there's just things that I haven't learned yet. And I'm going to keep working on it until I get the thing. And I have goals I've worked towards for 10, 15 years. And I have as much, if not more, enthusiasm towards working to them now than I did 10, 15 years ago. And, it's funny because knowing the things I know now, I would have made the progress I did in 10 to 15 years in 2 to 3. But that's why it's important and valuable to find, mentors or books, who can tell you, who can give you feedback as to how to reach whatever you're working towards more effectively and quickly.
So you come to Austin, you work in tech sales. I want to jump now forward to Job Machine, the company that you co-founded and that you're running. How did that come about? How did you meet your co-founder, and what is Job Machine all about?
For sure. So over the next 10 years after I moved to Austin, I worked in tech sales at a few different companies, learned a ton. I really enjoyed it. I really liked tech sales. And also, Peter Drucker used to say that entrepreneurship, or maybe it was business, is marketing and innovation. That's it. And marketing is code word for sales, revenue. It's not like the marketing department. It's revenue and product. At least in the tech environment, it's revenue, product. It's important. The most, in most organizations, the people who get paid the most are either people driving revenue or people who are building things. And that could be product, could be engineering, depending on the company. But when I moved to Austin because I wanted to start a company. I wanted to build a company and be an entrepreneur since I was 22, and I read that Napoleon Hill book. So I was just working backwards from my goal and saying, all right, well, what's going to get me there? And I decided that the most effective way to get to those goals was through building a tech company. And I remember I had no idea how to build a tech company, but what I did know is that there were skills I needed to acquire. Selling was one of them. So I went and got a job in tech sales. So I was very good at tech sales. I mean, I'm still selling in my role as the CEO of Job Machine now. And with that being said, I never looked at that as a career. That was a step. I was getting paid to learn how to do something that I was going to need when I started my company. So while I was working in tech sales for a decade and continuing to acquire skills and meet people and become better at the things that eventually led to starting Job Machine, my side hustle / passion project I did for free for literally a decade was helping people get jobs. The guy who helped me get a job, he changed my life. And the guy today is massively successful. His company's does awesome. And so there was no way I could pay him back for it. I mean, he was already pretty wealthy at the time. I was so grateful for him. I remember getting done with him helping me and being like, hey man, how do I ever pay you for it? How do I say thank you? It's like, hey man, first off, you owe me nothing. I did this because I wanted to help you. And the other reason is that somebody helped me when I was getting my first job. So I'm going to tell you to do the same thing that he told me, but just to pay it forward, help other people. And I said, done. I'm going to do it. And I started helping people and I got good at it. And I get, if people were super grateful. So I got addicted to that positive feedback. I just help people, and not just a couple. I helped hundreds of people get jobs. I'm I'm a pretty intense person, but I get focused on something. So in the late 20 teens, I decided I'm going to build a business that's focused on resolving the pain associated with getting a job. When you think about like a lot, you've probably talked about this on your show a bunch of times. When you talk to entrepreneurs, one of the worst things you can do if you want to build a tech company is to build a solution and find the problem it solves. You got to start with the problem, a problem that it hurts a lot and delivers a lot, which, by the way, the pain of a problem can be measured in dollars and cents. If it can't, it's probably not a very good problem or a very big problem. So how much money is that costing people? And then like how many people experience that pain? And then you go through and you think about, well, what's the difficulty of solving that problem? What's a new innovative way to solve for that? And then if you can do something like 10 times cheaper or 10 times better than the existing solution, you got yourself a business. So I got focused on that. I also understand that if you try to be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to anybody. So I got really focused on helping military veterans get jobs. My dad was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. And when he got out of the military, he had a fairly easy time getting a job because he was a lieutenant colonel, and he brought with him like a great government contract and worked in consulting, started a couple of businesses along the way. But what I knew is that first and second term enlisted people have many times an awful time getting a job out of the military. So what did I do? At the time I was selling robots to oil refineries for a company called Gecko. But yeah, I moved my side hustle / passion project to helping veterans get jobs. So I connected with a bunch of the Texas Workforce Commission people who help veterans. I got linked up with the guy at Fort Hood in Killeen, and I got focused on helping veterans get jobs. Man, I worked with a lot of veterans, and I learned a bunch about the problems that they have. And one of the things, and I got really good at solving it. I had a whole network of different like companies in Austin that I'd send people to, and I'd help them with their resumes, and I'd coach them, do all the things. One of the things that I learned is that there's these institutions, some of them are nonprofits, some of them are like big post-secondary schools that are for-profit. There's the unemployment system. There's institutions that get paid tens of billions of dollars to get people jobs, which is interesting because, I did the same thing when I was like, I'm going to resolve the pain associated with getting a job. One of the first things I realized that, man, most people that don't have a job don't have a lot of money. So the employers do have a lot of money. Maybe I can solve their problems. So that's what everyone else does. But I learned now that, wait a second, there's these massive businesses that have a huge pain associated with placement, because it's hard. Getting anyone a job is hard, even if you're established in your career. But like if you're a career changer or you're coming out of the military and you've been programmed a certain way, which is really helpful when you're in the military. Many of those things are not very helpful when you're coming out. And plus a lot of the things that you learn when you're coming out of the military about getting a job in the civilian world doesn't actually work because you're being taught by many times people that have never gotten a job in the civilian world. So it's challenging. And again, there's a huge pain, and it can be measured in dollars and cents. I learned about this program called Vet Tech, where, there were these for-profit training providers that were helping like thousands in some cases of veterans per year and getting paid like $15K per veteran. And they were losing, and they only got paid when the veterans got jobs. So I ended up, what I did is I ended up like helping them get those people jobs. I worked on like a results only basis and got some customers, and then got my co-founder, who I'd known for 6 years, to come and work with me.
Nice. So what is your co-founder's background real quick? And then I want to talk about where the company is now and what it's doing.
Yeah, for sure. So my co-founder's background, he went to UT Austin for about 6 years, had 3 different majors, really liked college, then realized that he needed to go learn something that was going to lead to him making money. So he got a second degree at the Texas A&M in nuclear engineering, then realized that nuclear engineers either work in the middle of nowhere or underwater. So he did the rational thing and got a job as an SDR, entry-level tech sales. But he's an engineer, and he was in a tech sales job, and he was like, I cannot stand this. This is not what I want to be doing. So he built a software that automated his job and the jobs of the other 30 SDRs in the team. And he made the company he worked for, VMware, I think $28 million in 6 months. Which was like literally like he predicted it was going to happen. He was going to make him $28 million, and he was only 5 days early in making them $28 million. And he took that company, and in and then one of the greatest sales I've ever heard of, convinced their legal team to give him the intellectual property for that for free so he could go start his own company, which was called Chronologic, which he grew to at its peak a $70 million valuation, raised $20 million. He left there shortly after I went full-time to build what eventually became Job Machine. We got introduced 6 years ago by one of the founders of Trendkite, who I used to work for. He linked us up, and we started working together a little over 3 years ago, and we've been at it ever since.
Nice. And you've raised money, you have product, you have clients. What is the company doing right now, and where's it going?
So right now we're working with big institutions that have to place people in jobs. So some of those are like for-profit post-secondary schools that have to place 70% or more of their graduates, so they lose access to federal funding for their incoming student loans. We work with workforce providers, which, if you think about the unemployment system, every city and county in the United States has a workforce board. That workforce board can either help people on unemployment in their area, or they can put that out to bid and have a nonprofit or for-profit company take responsibility to go and get those people jobs. So we work with them as well, and we're starting to work in the outplacement space to help companies get people jobs as they're doing reductions in force. So basically, big layoffs.
Nice. And so, what do you see the future of Job Machine?
Yeah, well, we call it our BHAG, our big, hairy, audacious goal, is to make it to where any American who wants a job can get one. So we've grown really quickly. We grew 164% in the second half of last year, and like consecutive month-over-month growth. We had a 44% month last month. We're going to have a 14% month this month. So things are going really well. We're going to keep growing this thing, and we're building it. Like we got asked by an investor this just a couple months ago, and what we told him, it sounds like the right answer, but it's true. We're building a company that could IPO someday, and it's not because we necessarily want to IPO. Somebody buys us along the way. We do math. Like we're going to look at the opportunities in front of us as we continue to grow this, and we do math. And also, like I think a mistake that many companies make is that they build to be sold by somebody. And I think you get a better outcome when you build something that's adding tons of value to your customers. When you focus on delivering value to your customers, which also can be measured in dollars and cents, you build things that are more useful and are more innately valuable, and you end up creating a market around it. And what we're doing is we're building this engine that works on the consumer side of the employment market. And you reach a critical mass of, let's say, like 100,000 concurrent job seekers. There's a lot of value in that. There's data that we have and nobody else does. And, and we automate every step of getting a job except for showing up to an interview. And our customers, like we delight them daily. They love us. We've got, over 100% net retention. So our existing customer base is expanding their relationships with us, and we get a lot of inbound. So it's exciting.
Nice. And I think that's actually great advice for all entrepreneurs, and I'm going to paraphrase it just a little bit. Build something that adds value and stands alone. And if along the way you sell it to somebody else and make a lot of money, that's awesome. But don't build it with the thing of, I'm building this just to be sucked up so I get cash.
Yeah, Zig Ziglar said, and I'm paraphrasing, that if you help enough other people get what they want out of life, eventually you have all the things that you want. So, I think that like making money is great. And also, this is another Napoleon Hill thing, is that like all that money is, assuming it's made ethically, is a measure of the value you've created to your fellow man. So making money in of itself is an ethical and good thing to do. And it's great. Like money helps you solve problems. Money also doesn't like solve all your problems. Like what I've heard said is that money just makes you a more extreme version of who you already are. If you are happy and generous, poor, you're going to be even happier and even more generous when you're rich. If you're miserable and a jerk, they're going to be even more miserable and even bigger jerk when you have a lot of money. So money is cool, and that's definitely an important goal. But it's really more of an important goal because I'm super competitive, and like it is more fun to have a really big goal for that than having a small goal. And the big thing is having an impact. Like I want to leave America even better than it was when I was born into this country. And that's a big focus and a big mission for my life.
So switching gears here as we wrap this up, you, like many people your age in their 30s, in the last 10, 15 years said, Austin sounds cool. Let's go build a tech career in Austin. What do you think's great about the Austin tech community today? Where do you think we're going? And is there anything that Austin needs to pay attention to not screw it up?
Well, yeah. I mean, Austin's an interesting town, right? If you look back even before when I moved here in 2014, Austin's was always kind of a hidden gem in Texas. It was the place where it was a college town, so you had a lot of young talent here. It used to be the place where it was kind of the cove where all the hippies would go to, keep Austin weird. But it's still Texas, so people wear cowboy hats and boots, and they've got great values, and there's kind of like a resilience and a toughness that comes from being part of Texas. And you inject the tech ecosystem into this, which originally a lot of tech companies would open their sales divisions here because you could pay people lower base salaries than the Bay Area or New York, and also hit different time zones. Because due in large part to the quality of the engineering talent at places like UT and A&M, and then even just the sales talent you get from a lot of the other schools here in Texas. You had a great talent pool. So naturally, you were going to get, companies, entrepreneurs coming here, building things, but then you compound that with some of the not so favorable tax regulation in other states in this beautiful country. It's drawn even more people here. I think some of the most encouraging, really tailwinds that you see are money moving here, which is obviously Elon moving here is a big deal. I saw David Sachs moved here recently. Joe Lonsdale's obviously here. So there's a lot of companies that are moving here. I think that Austin or Silicon Hills, as they're starting to call it. I think that you're going to see wealth expansion. You're going to see growth here in wealth over the next 20 to 30 years that the kind of stuff that you saw in San Francisco in the 90s. It's the best place on earth to be if you're looking to grow and to make a bunch of money. I think some of the biggest challenges, really the main thing where when I debate this all the time with one of my close friends who just moved to San Francisco because he wants to be a billionaire and he thinks that's the place to build his company, is that a lot of the core AI and AI infrastructure, it's all out of San Francisco. There's a lot of defense tech companies coming up in Austin, which is really exciting. Hardware, manufacturing. There are SaaS companies here. There's a lot of great ones. But if you look at AI and how important AI is going to be in the future, that's out of San Francisco. So if and when a couple of those start popping up in Austin, which again, if I was building an AI infrastructure company right now, which I'm not,
it's happening. It's I always say don't listen to the press. There's a lot of AI infrastructure that is bubbling up in Austin.
Well, that's exciting. You know better than I would. That starts to happen and it starts to succeed. It's good. It's just going to be a boom town like we haven't seen in a generation.
Right. Well, Brandon, I'm really glad that we crossed paths. I enjoyed talking to you at this dinner. We went and had a drink afterwards, and I just knew you had to be on the show. You bring a lot of energy to that, and you're really, what Austin needs. We need young, aggressive entrepreneurs who care about the city, not just about making the money and wanting to see the best things happen. So hopefully you will spread that out to the other young entrepreneurs and leaders that being part of the greater Austin ecosystem is as important as building the company itself. So I like your attitude. I like your enthusiasm. I bet we haven't seen the last of Brandon Tigges. I think there's a lot to come in his future. So again, thanks for being here. Any final words?
I just appreciate your enthusiasm for people and for life in general and for Austin. It was an absolute pleasure getting to know you on Tuesday night, and I look forward to continuing to see the impact that you and ATC have on the city.
Nice. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who tuned in and listened. We host this show for you, the audience. So make sure that if you listen to this, make sure that you're sharing it with your coworkers. You're sharing it with your friends. The only way this show grows is if people talk about it. So we are still in a word of mouth economy. It doesn't matter what we do. It's certainly true with the success of a small local podcast like this. So tell all your friends, post it on social media. Say, listen to this Brandon clown. You're going to like what he has to say. So anyway, thank you so much for being here, Brandon. Thank you to everybody who listened. We'll be back next week on Austin Tech Connect.